Yes, guys, I'm Si. Welcome to Ace Podcast Nation. Welcome to the Footy News Weekly, where we break down all the football news of the week. We have a look at various different stories and rumours and all the rest of it. You guys ask some questions, we get involved. So first and foremost, we were supposed to be having Theo from the Sheds End podcast. Unfortunately, he's had a last-minute personal situation which he's had to deal with, so he's not coming on tonight. He'll be on next week in some form. Next Thursday is the return of Rodri Giggs on football. Hip hip hooray! Rodders is back. We're going to do a Premier League preview, catch up with him, get ready for the new season. Obviously, we have the Championship season coming on Saturday as well, so we're going to discuss a bit of that this evening. We talked about that yesterday, though, on the Championship show more, but I am going to do re-give my predictions for that, just because we had a bit of internet connection issues around that time. We give our Premier League predictions. But the question that I want to ask for you guys today to start us off is, which Premier League club has had the best transfer window as of today, the 3rd of August? Which club has had the best window? That's what I want to know from you guys. I'm going to discuss it in just a second. But I want to hear from you guys. You tell me who you think has had the best window in the Premier League so far. Which team has improved the most? Obviously, Arsenal have signed Declan Rice. They've signed Timber, Havertz. United have signed a few. Chelsea have signed a few. Looks like they may get Casado if Brighton. I don't know though. Brighton playing hardball. We got Robert Sanchez, the goalkeeper, going to Chelsea. We got Newcastle have made a few signings, made another 40 million signing today for Southampton player. So it's interesting stuff. There's lots to discuss, lots to get into. There's even been some rumours this past week about Mbappe coming to the Premier League and Chelsea trying to put together some sort of players plus cash deal. I've got to be honest. I think the only place Mbappe goes is Real Madrid. I think if Madrid can find the money or some sort of deal which pleases PSG, he'll go this summer. I honestly think the fact that he turned down Saudi Arabia, or I didn't even want to talk to them, that makes me think everyone seems to think he's got a deal to go to Madrid next summer at the end of his contract. I think that probably is the case, but I also think Madrid hadn't budgeted for him this summer, so they will either have to find the money, get some sort of deal with some players or whatnot, sell some players. But it's an interesting one. Would you like to see Mbappe in the Premier League? Because I got to be honest. So I asked a couple of my United supporting mates, if Qatar took over, would you want Mbappe? And they all said the same thing. Look, great footballer, but the hassle that comes with it, they're kind of trying to move away from that. Like Ronaldo and all that situation last year, like that was really disruptive. And I think that in United's case, it would be just more like hassle than they need, It's interesting. Like, again, Chelsea have been an absolute shit show, and I was really looking forward to talking to Theo tonight to kind of put that to him, because they've just been shocking off the pitch. On the pitch, it's just been a shambles. But we will do that. It'll be next week. So I just don't think. I mean, I could imagine Chelsea signing him. I just don't think it would be a good idea for him. I think great footballer. But like the amount of money you'd have to pay him, the circus that comes with it, I just think he's more hassle than he's worth. I think Madrid probably the best suited club for him in terms of the circus, the money it would cost, everything. And by the way, what a team they're going to have. Like Camavinga, looks like he's going to go on and be like the best defensive midfielder in the world in a few years. You've got Jude Bellingham in there, one of the most highly rated young players. Then you add Mbappe into it, plus all the other players. They got a young squad, a good squad. Madrid could be dominating Europe for years. But it's interesting because the Premier League always seems to do quite well. Reese says it's really hard to tell. All clubs seem to have strengthened very wisely. Villa, Newcastle, both doing a good one. Arsenal strengthened key positions. They do need a number 9. He says Mbappe is given everything at PSG. England is different. You can't come in and be the main man. He'll be found out quick, and he won't get his own way all the time. Can he handle that? And I think that's the thing, isn't it? Is if you come into any of the traditional sort of big 6, say, yes, he'll still be the main man, but there's so many egos. The clubs are bigger worldwide. Like, he won't get the free reign that he gets in Paris. I think in fairness to him, I think he's taken Paris as far as he can. They tried everything. They kept him, and he gave his all. They just couldn't get it right in Europe. I'd love to see him, playing in the Premier League in one way. But if I was a supporter of a Premier League club, I don't know whether I'd necessarily want him. Like, on the transfer window, I think Arsenal have done some good business. I think there's question marks over Declan Rice. I'll continue to say that. And I think there's question marks over Havertz if he's going to play in midfield. But I think overall their squad looks better than it was last year. I think Manchester City is an interesting one because Gundogan was so vital to the way they play in every way. Like, on the ball, they're dictating the tempo, getting forwards. Like, he is going to be a huge miss. And, Kovacic is good from Chelsea. I'm not sure I don't think they're at the same level, though. I don't think he's the same level as Gundogan. So City are going to be interesting what they can kind of do now, and I'm sure they'll sign a player or two now before the end of the window. Gvardiol looks like it's got to be done, he's a great defender. It's a good signing. Liverpool have picked up a couple of really intelligent signings. I still think they need more, so it'll be interesting who they bring in. They've been linked with Lavia from Southampton. I think that's a decent signing on top of what they've already got, because their midfield really needed like a clear out. I think I said before, I think United have gone about their business quite well, quietly just got the right players, not necessarily the biggest name players, which they've done in the past. They've gone for players that will fit the system, fit the squad, made the squad deeper. So that'll be interesting. Obviously, they've got the risk of a young striker. You don't know what's going to be, how long he'll take to settle, but he is a very good player. So it's going to be interesting. I think Villa, for me, is really flown under the window. Villa have, in terms of what they've done in this transfer window. They've brought in Moussa Diaby from Leverkusen for sort of 55 million euros. Absolutely phenomenal right winger, young, 24, just about to hit his peak. Is perfect for what they're looking to do. Then they brought in Pau Torres. Pau Torres, 26-year-old centre back. He was linked with all of the biggest clubs in the Premier League and Europe a couple of years back. He is a quality footballer, and they signed him for 33 million euros. And I look at that, and I look at like United, when they eventually get rid of Maguire, they need the centre back, and for that price, he would have been a great signing. Tillmans from Leicester, dreadful last year, bad attitude, bad performances, bad everything. But we all know he's a proven Premier League player. Probably just a bad season. Leicester went down. He's in the last year of his contract. Probably a combination of those things. You can imagine him coming good. They've already got a great manager, Villa, and they showed that last year. Like, I watched Villa. I was speaking to Derek Brazil about this today, actually. Is that we were talking about, like, you looked at Villa last year a couple of times towards the end of the season, and they looked like they were only like 2 or 3 players away from really, really kicking on. So you add in, you've got Diaby on the wing, you've got Torres at the back, you've got Tillmans, then you've got Sanson from Strasbourg, a solid central midfielder. You've got Wesley Morales is a centre forward from Levante, 26. I don't know a lot about him. Or they might be actually loan players. Might be wrong about that. But just those 3, even to start with, I think phenomenal signings. I really do. So it'll be interesting who they pick up. someone told me that they should go for Harry Maguire. I disagree. I think Harry Maguire needs to go to a side in the Premier League which plays with a low block and not a high line. And I think Villa play quite high line, so I don't necessarily think that he would suit them. But I think Villa have had a tremendous window. Who else have we got? I think Chelsea might have had a sneaky, decent window without drawing without somehow not really drawing much attention to themselves. I think Newcastle have made some great signings. That Sandro Tonali, who's gone to Newcastle, is an absolutely fantastic signing. And I really think he's going to do some bits. Sabotzier, I think it's pronounced, that Liverpool's going to do bits. James Maddison going to Spurs. Chelsea have signed that Christopher Nkunku, and it looks like they're going to loan him out, which is just remarkable. It's like the good old Chelsea days, that is, loan everyone out. And then you got Declan Rice, which I've said my piece on Declan. He's a good footballer. But what it comes down to is, if I was any of those top 6 clubs and I needed a central midfielder, I'd be looking to bring in Caicedo over Declan Rice. Apparently, Brighton have set a deadline on the Caicedo deal, and if it's not done by next week, it's not getting done, and they're not going to let him go, which is interesting. Also, apparently, another Premier League team has been sniffing around him this week as well. So it's really interesting, like the way the Premier League sort of transfers are developing, because I think Arsenal, Liverpool, United have done some good work. I think Chelsea have done all right. Robert Sanchez is an interesting one from Brighton. He's a good keeper. Is he like top level keeper? I'm not sure. No, I'm just not sure if he's the tip top. But who knows? Maybe he's the one. So here's a question for you guys as well. Is there's been links to Chelsea doing a direct swap deal for Lukaku for Vlahovic. Is that a good deal for Chelsea, for Juventus? Is that a good swap? I don't think it is. Like, I think Vlahovic is I think he's a good striker, and I think in the right team, he could be a great striker. Is Lukaku still in that, or has he ever been in that sort of upper echelon of like the very top strikers? I'm not sure. I think it's a good deal for Chelsea if they get Vlahovic in and Lukaku goes to Juve. Well, I guess you've got rid of Lukaku, which is what they want. But I think Dusan Vlahovic, if I'm Juventus, I either want money for him or I don't let him go, or someone else. I just don't think Lukaku's the answer for them. But maybe he seems to do quite well in Italian football. Juventus need to make some changes because they didn't have a great season. So maybe that is the way they're thinking of it. They need to freshen up a bit. Lukaku, I don't know what to say about him really. I like Vlahovic though. I think he's a good striker, and I think he'll score some goals under Pochettino. I really do. Newcastle been linked with Southampton defender, or I think they might have even signed him. They've agreed a deal for Tino Livramento, 40 million, which seems to be the figure that Newcastle sign all their players for. Newcastle have agreed a deal for Southampton right back Tino Livramento, 40 million, including add-ons. I think that's a bit. I got to say, I think that's a blow for Southampton. I think he's a real good right back. And again, Newcastle, some great signings like Tonelli, Harvey Barnes, really good young players. Not just that though. and then you've got Livramento. But what I think with it is, if you look at those players, they look like Eddie Howe players. They look like players that Eddie Howe will get the best out of. They're young, they're keen, they want to push on. And I think that they're going to do well. I think Newcastle will be up there again, challenging. I don't know whether they'll be right up there, because when I look at, I don't know, let's have a look at the table and let's have a little look at the sort of top 4 race, and let's have a little chat about who we think is doing well. We'll start with Arsenal. Arsenal finished second last year. They relied heavily on Eddie Nketiah after Jesus was injured. Jesus is injured again. I think they need a number 9, because Nketiah misses a lot of chances for me. I don't think he's like top level. I think he's a good squad player. So I think Arteta will probably try and bring in another striker now. A good signing for them would have been Gonzalez from Benfica, I think. But I believe he's gone to Paris today. Jesus was missing the start of the season to blow. You could play Kai Havertz up there. You've also got the guy who they brought in from Brighton last year, Trossard. Yeah, I think Arsenal done some good business. I'm not sure if they know what their first choice team is. They've been linked with David Raya. Seems like from the outside, at least, as if Ramsdale's under a bit of pressure. Fans not happy with him. Arsenal fans. I mean, I know it's not like Arsenal fans to be unhappy with their own team, but you'd think they'd be all set for the new season. Great, they've spent money. They finished second last year. They had a good season. They've strengthened, but apparently not. Apparently Ramsdale's been the target for a few choice words recently after some pre-season performances. But they got Matt Turner as a reserve keeper. They got Aaron Ramsdale. Do they need David Raya? I'm not so sure. I think they need a number 9 more than they need a goalkeeper. I got to be honest. They've got like 5 goalkeepers on their books, so I'm not sure they need another. But they've got Saliba, they've got Gabriel. I'm not convinced about Gabriel still. I think he's got a mistake in him. But when Saliba's there, he covers up for it very well. You can also play Timber at centre back. I know he's been brought in predominantly as a right back, but they do seem to have a lot of centre backs. Like I know, like Tommy Ishu, I think his name's pronounced. I know he plays right back, but I'm pretty sure he used to play centre back. Ben White can play centre back. You've got Rob Holding, you've got Kiwa, you've got Timber, you've got Gabriel, you've got Saliba. Solid. And then you've got Cedric Suarez, you've got Tobiashu, you've got Ben White, Tavares. Kieran Tierney, I think, has got to go from Arsenal for his career, because the manager does not seem as if he fancies him at all. Hasn't really got a look in him pre-season. He prefers Zinchenko at left back. And when Zinchenko hasn't been available, they played Ben White and Tomishi as the fullbacks. Kieran Tierney is a very, very good fullback, a good left back. He's 26. If I'm him, I'm looking to go, because the manager does not fancy him at all. So I think Arsenal have done pretty good. Midfield-wise, they've got Declan Rice, Thomas Partey, and Jorginho and El Nene as their sort of 4 defensive options in the midfield area. Then you've got Odegaard coming off the back of a great season. You've got Lokonga, Kai Havertz. Still don't think he's a midfielder, but okay. Emil Smith-Rowe, Riviera, Martinelli, Trossard, Sacco. So they look Marquinhos. You've got Gabriel Jesus. Balogun is a good striker. I think he might be going on loan if he hasn't already. But actually, Balogun, he'd be my if he hasn't gone on loan already, or if he's going to. I think Balogun would be my preferred choice if I'm an Arsenal fan, to play centre forward while Jesus is out. But I guess Arsenal fans would know better than me. Let's have a look at that Chelsea squad. So Chelsea, as ever, have spent a fortune, as they always do. Goalkeeping options, they do need a keeper. They got Kepa, and then they've got like a couple of sort of Bettinelli and Slonia. So they probably, they do need a keeper. So Sanchez coming in makes sense to challenge Kepa for that space. Fofana's got a long-term injury, which means they probably need a centre-back. But then Levi Colwell's come back for his loan at Brighton. Brighton were trying to get him signed on a permanent deal in the Caicedo deal. Chelsea are having none of it. And Levi Colwell has now signed a new 6-year deal, which I was a bit surprised by, but good for him. I would like to see him go and take his Chelsea place. I think he's good enough. I think he's a great centre-back. And I think he showed at Brighton that he can play at the top level of the Premier League. So get him in there while Fofana's injured. Give him a chance. You've got Trevor Chalobah, Thiago Silva. You've got Ben Chilwell, Cucurella. It's pretty solid. Reece James. Some solid options in the midfield. You've got the phenomenal Enzo Fernandez in defensive midfield. Conor Gallagher. And then they've signed that Chukwuemeka as a central midfielder, who's a pretty good prospect. You've got Sterling, Mudryk. I think Mudryk will do well this year. He was like a bit of a face of ridicule last year, but I think there's a player there if he can get his confidence up. Callum Hudson-Odoi, I think he's probably got to go. Ziyech, Ziyech is a weird one. He was gone to Saudi and then he failed a medical, or there was some sort of problem with his medical and didn't go. You've got a couple of youngsters like Angelo who are good. And then they've signed up front. They've got Nkunku, 25. I'd imagine he's going to be their guy. But then you've also got, at the moment, you've got Lukaku. I'm assuming he's not going to be there. He hasn't got a squad number. And then they got a couple of younger strikers in Nicholas Jackson and Armando Bruja. Bruja is an interesting one to me. I like him a lot. Only a young man, 21, but he's got 17 caps for Albania already. Kind of gone under the radar a bit. Played under 21s football last year, which was probably a bit of a worry. Although he did play for, I think he did go on a bit of a loan spell. But he's a very good footballer, and I think maybe Chelsea have got to give some of these young players a chance, But I guess we'll see how they develop with that squad. They've been linked with Harry Maguire again this week, very briefly. I don't think he's the right signing, but I wouldn't be surprised if they brought in someone like him to rotate with Thiago Silva. I think it's not the worst. It's not the worst signing in the world. Man City, again, I don't think they've done loads of business, but what they have done is quite clever. I think, as I said, Gundogan's a massive loss. They got two quality keepers in Edison and Stefan Ortega. I couldn't believe Stefan Ortega's 30. Great, what a keeper he was in the FA Cup final. He did so well. But they got Diaz and Ake and Stones and Akanji and Laporte. And they've got Gvardiol coming in. Obviously, Cancelo looks like he's going to Barcelona. Kyle Walker looks like he might be on his way out as well. So it makes sense why they're getting Gvardiol in. And then you've got your Kovacic. You've got Calvin Phillips. You've got Rodri. Bernardo Silva. De Bruyne. Cole Palmer played a few games last year. And then you've got Foden, Grealish, Haaland, Julian Alvarez. Incredible squad. I do think after Gvardiol, we see City sign at least one more midfielder or sort of attacking midfielder forward. I think that's pretty clear. But Bernardo Silva wants out as well. So I think Silva goes. I think Cancelo goes. And I think Kyle Walker's gone. So they're definitely bringing Gvardiol, who kind of covers the Walker go in, and Cancelo go. And Cancelo wasn't there last year anyway. Reece just said, Jesus did a podcast a few weeks ago and he said he can't see Foden being happy there much longer. Pep doesn't play him often enough. Do you know what, mate, right? You couldn't blame him. Like, he's entering the peak of his kind of career in some ways, because players do peak earlier these days. He's 23. His value is supposedly 100 million plus. He's an England international. He's got the Euros coming up next year. I think it's difficult, isn't it? Because I wonder how many appearances he made last year. Let's have a look. I bet he made a good 30 odd, if I was guessing. No, right. No, this is the career stats. I wanted the stats for last year. Oh well. But I think if Foden became available, I think he'd be heavily linked with every man under the sun. And then the last team I'm going to look at is the Manchester United team. I really like Erik ten Hag. I think he's a good manager. And what has interested me about the way he's gone about his business is he seems to be getting rid of the big names. He got rid last year of all the people who were rumoured to be like the guys leaking to the press. So I'm looking at their keeper options. They've got Onana. Obviously, he's number one. They've got Tom Heaton, who's Premier League goalkeeper. He's good. They've also got Mate Kovar. They sold Nathan Bishop, which is surprising. The reason that's surprising, because I think Nathan Bishop was all right at number 3, and they could have loaned out Mateo Kovar, because I think Kovar gets more playing for Sparta week in, week out. But they've been linked with the Japanese goalkeeper, Suzuki. So I wouldn't be surprised if Suzuki comes in to be third choice, and then Kovar goes on loan. They got Martinez, Varane, Maguire, and Lindelof at the moment and Johnny Evans, as their sort of 4, which is really interesting, because I said last week, if they sign Johnny Evans, Harry Maguire might not even get on the bench for United if he stays, because effectively he's 6th choice. Because we already know that Ten Hag likes a left-footed centre-back, which means Luke Shaw plays ahead of Maguire, and so does Johnny Evans. On the other side, Lindelof had a great end of the season and shows that he's the first choice on the right-hand side. So Maguire's effectively 6th choice. And if he's insisting on staying, he's going to have a problem. And with the Euros coming up, he can't afford that. You've got Luke Shaw, you've got Malacia, you've got Alvaro Fernandez, they'll probably go on loan. And then you've got Dalot, Wan-Bissaka. The midfield's interesting. So as it stands today, you've got Casemiro, Scott McTominay, Eriksen, Fred, Van der Beek, Kobe Mainoo, Fernandez, Mount, and Hannibal. But I think Hannibal's going on loan to Luton. Kobe Mainoo's injured. Donny Van der Beek's going. Fred is going. And I think Scott McTominay will go as well. And I think they bring in Amrabat, which seems as if it's done. So then their options would be Casemiro, Amrabat, Mount, Christian Eriksen, and Kobe Mainoo and Bruno Fernandes. Very balanced, and they all fit the way that Ten Hag wants to play. Then on the left, you've got Rashford, Garnacho. On the right, you've got Sancho and Antony. But then you've also got in the background Pellistri, who's very decent. You've got Diallo, will he go on loan again? And then through the middle, you've got this new lad, Hojlund. Rashford can play there. They've also been playing Sancho as a false 9. And then Anthony Martial, who knows what's happening with him. And apparently there's an announcement coming next week that Mason Greenwood, they're making a decision. From a purely football point of view, if they keep Mason Greenwood and he hits the levels or beyond that he was previously, it's like a new signing. And what a signing as a footballer. What a footballer he was. Don't know if he still will be, because he hasn't played for 18 months, 2 years. It's very difficult to the Premier League is super competitive this year. And outside of Man City, who are there, I think everyone else is very closely matched. And it's going to be the top 8 to 10 teams. The results against each other are going to be really important this year in terms of how teams do. It's interesting, though, isn't it? Because I think if David Moyes can convince Maguire to go and he signs McTominay, West Ham have had a really good window. which is mental because if you lose £100 million player, you should be weaker. But I think West Ham are potentially going to end up stronger, which is crazy to me. Reece, I'm going to get to your question in just a second. But yeah, I stand by. You add McTominay and you add Harry Maguire to that West Ham side, and they are stronger than they were last year. It's just a fact. But they've lost a £100 million player. Reece says, here's one for you. Newcastle had to sell St. Maximum to the Saudi club for 30 million to buy Barnes, but due to FFP, today found 40 million for a defender without having to sell. Well, this is why it's all laughable, isn't it? I believe, mate, they signed some sort of sponsorship deal, but since the Harvey Barnes deal, I think. Let me check my facts. Newcastle faced scrutiny after £25 million a year sponsorship deal with Saudi events company seller. So yeah, I mean, there's that. It is what it is, isn't it? You know, and what I don't understand is how they can find that money, and they haven't got problems with FFP. But then you've got a club the size of Manchester United who have to sell players to buy Amrabat and haven't got the money to spend on Harry Kane, but have just signed a £900 million deal with Adidas for the next 10 years or whatever it is. So, like, how does that work? Now, we all put the Glazers aside. Like, when you look at the size of the clubs, both in the Champions League, United generate more money, get more money from sponsorships, etc. How are Newcastle able to find the money for these signings? And I'm sure Manchester United have spend more this summer. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it just seems weird. And look, Newcastle have been dogged with allegations of sport washing all summer. This summer, it seems like the media have targeted them a lot more for it this year. But it's because, like you say, they had to sell St. Maximum to the Saudi club for 30 million to buy Harvey Barnes. But then they found 40 million for the Southampton defender today with no problem. It's weird, isn't it? I don't really understand financial fair play to give a full explanation to it. All I know is that it's bullshit. Because ultimately, if Harry Kane's agent, which I believe is his brother, but if his agent contacts Manchester United and says, make a bid, we want to come to you, they'll find the money. But as it stands today, they haven't signed Amrabat because they want to move on Van der Beek and Fred. So it's such a ropey, weird subject. I don't understand it. And do you know what? Right, just while we're on this, just while I mention United, I'm already sick of the Haaland v Hojlund comparisons. Like, the only thing they've got in common is they're Scandinavian, they're blonde, and they have H beginning with their surnames. That's it. They're different players. Haaland is if he continues on his current trajectory and his potential, and he fulfills all his potential, he'll be up there with the Messi and the Ronaldos of the world. Hojlund's a 20-year-old Danish striker who has got a really good scoring record. When you break it down to his minutes per game, I think it works out about a goal every other game. But you got Sky Sports and these kind of pundits saying, "Oh, he scored 9 goals in Serie A. How will he cope with the Premier League?" Well, actually, if you look at it and you break down how many minutes he played, because he's young and he's coming off the bench, and then you take into account his record for Denmark, like, he looks like a prospect, a great prospect, and someone who looks like they'll suit United's style of play. It might take him a season, but as I said to someone today, if he scores 30% of the chances which Weghorst missed, he'll get 10 to 15 goals over the season, which, in my opinion, if he gets that 15 goals in his first season at United, then they should be ecstatic. He's a 20-year-old kid. He's going to be very nervous and whatnot when he comes in. He's a United fan. It's going to be very difficult. And I think the comparisons have got to stop, because at the end of the day, Haaland is a freak. He's incredible. Harry Kane, when he was 20, was stinking the place up on loan at Leicester. Different players develop at different speeds, different times. You've got to give young players time. He's a 20-year-old moving to a different country, to one of the biggest clubs in the world. I don't think it's unfair, regardless of his price. He doesn't decide that. Got to give him time. But it's the same as anything, isn't it? You compare Antony's treatment by TalkSport and Sky Sports last year, and you compare it to Harry Maguire, and you tell me who had a worse season and made more mistakes. Well, I can tell you that Maguire had a much worse season. Antony played much more games. And generally speaking, I thought he did all right. But he gets all sorts of ridicule, abuse. But yet we protect Harry Maguire at all costs. We're not even allowed to shout at him if you go by. They TalkSport spent 2 days the other day having a go at Nana because he shouted at flipping Maguire. It's insanity. What I wanted to look at was Antony's stats versus Jack Grealish, because I saw someone post on social media the other day that Antony stats versus the goals scored, the assists versus Grealish's were actually not that different last season, but Grealish had the best season ever and Antony's a flop. Again, he doesn't decide so Antony scored 20. Well, he made 44 appearances and scored 8 goals. I'm not going to have a deep dive into it. I'm just interested what the difference is. Jack Grealish, he scored, and he made last season. How many appearances did he make? Manchester City, 2023. Made 50 appearances and scored 5. So actually, their return in goals and appearances was not that different. And in fact, Antony scored more goals and made less appearances. I'm not saying that he was better. I'm just saying the difference in how players are treated by certain members of the media because of who they play for or where they're from. And let's not forget, Jack Grealish is a £100 million player as well. It's shameful. Some of these pundits, the lack of research they do is embarrassing. Like, they get paid thousands of pounds and they don't know anything. Like, you watch the likes of Graham Souness and stuff, they'll be trotting out Hojlund scored 9 goals in all season last year for Atlanta. How can you spend that much money on him? Blah, blah, blah. Well, actually, like I just mentioned, goals per game, he averages about a goal every other game, which is pretty good. Reese says the media have to be careful. We all know how the Saudi crown prince likes to deal with journalists who don't agree with him. Allegedly, my friend. What's the best signing, do you think, in the Premier League so far this season? Who's made the best signing? Oh, I'll open it up. What's the best signing in Europe? Top leagues this year. It's an interesting one. Best bit of business, West Ham getting 100 million for Declan Rice. I think, do you know what? I think Jude Bellingham's up there. I really do. Because they got him pretty cheap, considering what some of the prices were being banded about. Like, they were talking like 150 million at one point, and then I think they got him pretty cheap. So some of the biggest deals this summer: Declan Rice, 100 million plus 5 million add-ons; Jude Bellingham, 88 plus 25 in add-ons; Havertz, 65 million; Sabotzier to Liverpool for 60; Mason Mount, 55 plus 5; Tonali, 52 to Newcastle. Christopher Nkunku to Chelsea, 52. Malcolm from Zenit to Al Halil for 51 million. What a waste. 26 million player. Back out. Manuel Ugarte for 51 million to PSG. That is a great signing. Ruben Neves, 47 million to Al Halil. Mateus Cunha from Atletico Madrid to Wolves, 44 million. Andre Onana, 43.9 to United. Kim Min-jae, 43 million to Bayern. James Maddison, 40 million to Tottenham. Fabinho to Al Ittihad for 40 million. Pedro Porro from Sporting to Spurs for 39. Harvey Barnes, 38 million. Openda from Lens to Leipzig, 36.9. Alexis McAllister, 35, plus 20 million in add-ons. And Moussa Diaby, 34.6, with 17 million worth of add-ons to Villa. So that's the choices. What's the best signing out of all of them? Reese, while you're all pondering that, Reese just asked me, did you see Onana have a go at Maguire the other night? Yes, I did. I thought it was absolutely ludicrous, mate, that TalkSport got 2 days worth of their pundits criticising Onana for shouting at Maguire, ignoring the fact that in the same game, he shouted at Bruno, he shouted at Brandon Williams, he shouted at whoever was playing left back, Luke Shaw maybe, or Dallo. And also, when did the goalkeeper shouting at the defenders become a problem? What, because it's Harry Maguire? Piss off. And by the way, he was rightly shouted at by the goalkeeper. He played Christian Eriksen into trouble when Christian Eriksen had 3 players around him and it nearly cost him a goal. Heaton was shouting, Reece just said there in the comments, Heaton was shouting at Brandon Williams because he gave away a goal. That's what goalkeepers are supposed to do. The protection that Harry Maguire gets from the media, from TalkSport specifically, but Sky as well. Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher, I think, are great pundits, but they are so reluctant to criticise Harry Maguire. Look at how Gary Neville criticised Bruno Fernandes last year to the point where he said stuff which wasn't even true about him asking to come off, but they won't criticise Harry Maguire, who didn't even play that much, but had a comical season, making numerous mistakes. And what people forget is it's not just the mistakes he did make, which led to goals, which I think was like 5 or 6 that led to goals. There was also probably 4, 5, 6, which nearly led to goals, but De Gea saved, or Casemiro or Martinez made last-ditch tackles and stopped. Maguire was woeful last year, and he was rightly criticised by people who tried to be, tried to give an honest opinion. I just didn't, and I couldn't believe how TalkSport were. It felt like, do you know what it felt like? I got to be honest, and I'm not one for like conspiracies and stuff. It felt like a bit of an agenda. It was starting against Onana for whatever reason, because I couldn't understand why it was even a story. And they milked it for like a day and a half on TalkSport. It was mental. Reece says we need a shout at Liverpool at Cardiff. Thankfully, Allsop is out for a few games. Really don't rate him. Would love to get Tom Heaton back. Well, mate, let me tell you something, right? United, at the moment, they've got Onana, Heaton, and Kovac. Kovac is awesome. He's a wicket keeper, but he plays exactly like Onana with his feet. I know Heaton nearly went to Luton and they stopped him because they didn't have Onana at that point. And I know they're in negotiations with this Japanese striker, Japanese keeper. If they get the Japanese keeper in Suzuki, either Kovac or Heaton's going to go on loan. In the pre-season, Kovac was outstanding. He also played 40-odd games last year for Sparta Prague. I would not be surprised to see Kovac stay as the number 2. And then Heaton be allowed to go, because Heaton supposedly wanted one last crack at being a first choice keeper, but he's also counts as an academy player for United, so there's that complication. I think from what I can gather, he's happy to stay, but if they say he can go, he's also happy to go and do that. Would love him at Cardiff, mate. Even at 37, he's a great keeper. He's great with his feet, which fits the way the manager wants to play at Cardiff. And he's also, he organises defence and says. Reece says it's a tough one because he's doing his job. If he's not good enough, it isn't his fault. I think it makes it worse for him because of all the media and the fan poison aimed at him. It's the added pressure. I'm assuming you're talking about Maguire. He's brought I never, ever will. I think the abuse that footballers take is disgusting. There's no need to abuse him. If you're doing a podcast or you're just on your social media and you're giving an opinion about his football performance or ability, that's fine. You don't need to insult the man. But I also think he hasn't helped himself with some of the things he's done. I think he comes across as very arrogant, saying things like, I've got nothing to prove. Well, you're a professional footballer. You should always have something to prove. I see what you're saying, and I think it must be very difficult for him, which is why I don't understand why he has turned down West Ham as it stands. I know there was talk that David Moyes is going to speak to him today to try and sort of talk him round, but it seems like he thinks he's too good for West Ham. And being honest, and I'll put the question to you guys, is West Ham Harry Maguire's level where he can excel and do well? I think it is. I don't think he's good enough for the very top level, but I think in the right team who play the right tactics that suit him, like West Ham play a low block, they defend their own box, they play deep. That suits him perfectly. Don't really play out from the back too much, or not like incessantly. So it takes the pressure off him. He can play a bit more direct. He can still bring the ball out, which he can do all right. But he can defend his box, which he's very good at. He can organise defence. He can be very good at that. Makes sense, doesn't it? It's just a weird one. And Henderson, transfer fell through, I believe. Yeah, that was a weird one because for the whole summer, it looked like Dean Henderson was going to Forest for 30 million. They were happy. United were happy. Henderson was happy. They were just waiting for this Onana deal to happen. And then all of a sudden, it seems to have gone quiet. So I don't know whether they're negotiating the price and that's what it is, or whether it's completely fallen through. Like Forest have got some good keepers. Got to be fair. Reece also says, Maguire brought it on himself, but the media go for him for making mistakes. But that causes added pressure. So he'll overthink things and makes more mistakes, and the media strike again. They love it. Yeah, I think he gets away very lightly, mate, in the media compared to some players. I really do. Like TalkSport and Sky will not criticise him. The papers sometimes have gone after him, but even, like look at last week, they went after Onana for shouting at him instead of pointing out that Maguire made a mistake, which nearly cost a goal again. It's strange to me, mate. I don't know whether it's because he's England cap or because he's England's first choice. If he stays at United for money or whatever his reasons are, he wants to fight for his place, I really think someone in his team has got to put him aside and say, mate, you're potentially sixth choice. You might not even make the bench. You cannot afford that in the year, like the Euros or in the summer. Gareth Southgate has already said if you have another season like that where you're not playing, you're not going to be in the team. Like, he needs to go. In my opinion, West Ham is the best team for him. But, as Reece just says there, Everton, for me, Dyche plays a very deep, flat 4-4-2, would suit that deep back line. Less pressure on the team, expecting to fight relegation again. Mistakes won't be criticised as much. Yeah, there's not as much media attention on Everton or West Ham than there is on Manchester United. Like, love them or hate them, United generate clicks. That's why people talk about them. That's why I end up talking about them so much. Like, they generate views. They generate people. They talk sport are talking about a pre-season friendly and about a goalkeeper shouting at a defender because it generates outrage and clicks from the United fans. They are one of, if not the biggest club in the world, and that comes with a lot of pressure. Going back to what I was saying about Hojlund, for a 20-year-old moving to a different country, playing for a club the size of United, it's going to take him time to adapt. So United fans and United as a club have got to let him adapt. I actually think when they play Wolves in the first game of the season, that Rashford will start through the middle, or Sancho will start as a false nine, and they'll put Hojlund on the bench just to try and remove a bit of pressure from him. Because they could play Garnacho off the left, they could play Antony on the right, they could play Sancho through the middle. There's lots of different options that they don't have to rush him in. Maybe he comes in and does really well in training and they like, yeah, he's got to play. But I wouldn't be surprised if Rashford plus starts that first game through the middle and they bring Hojlund on for 15 minutes at the end. But you're right, there's even more pressure on Hojlund, as you say, because of what Haaland's done. But as I said earlier, mate, like, Haaland is a once-in-a-lifetime freak of nature who, if he carries on and fulfills his potential and his current trajectory, will be up there with the Messis and the Ronaldos of the world. Like, he's that good. His scoring record's insane. His finishing is insane. Like, how many times do you see Haaland go have a chance and put it wide? Hits the target every time. He's so good, so strong, so quick. One of the things about Hojlund, which I think is going under the radar, Hojlund is very quick. Like, so I think technically from the stats and the measurements, he's actually quicker than Rashford. But I think that's deceptive because actually, if you look at it, Rashford's initial acceleration is probably much, much quicker. But once you get going, Hojlund is supposed to be real quick. We'll see, won't we? So I did my championship predictions yesterday about relegation and promotion and the likes of it. Obviously, did it a bit with my heart and got Cardiff up there. So relegation-wise, I believe that in the championship, the relegated teams this year will be Rotherham, Huddersfield, and I can't remember. Who was the third team I said? Rotherham, Huddersfield, and Plymouth will go down. I think Leicester City will win the league. I think Middlesbrough will finish second. And I think the playoffs will be made up of Leeds United, Southampton, Sunderland, and Cardiff City. That'll be wrong. So we'll come back to that at the end of the season. My predictions for the Premier League will be as follows. I think Manchester City win the league. I can tell you that much. I think going down in the Premier League this year will be, unfortunately, I think it'll be Luton, Burnley, and Bournemouth. And the top four, I think, will be Manchester City will win the league. I think Manchester United will finish second. I think Liverpool will finish third. And I think Arsenal will finish fourth. I think Arsenal might finish third, actually, Liverpool fourth. I think Newcastle will finish fifth. And Chelsea will finish fifth. Newcastle will finish sixth. But we'll see. Yeah, he says Haaland. How many times did Haaland score 2 goals and then get subbed off by Pep? Could have scored a record number of hat tricks. Yeah, unbelievable. Haaland is like a different. It's like he's not human. He's so good. Yeah, no, it would be a shame if Luton go. Like, no shame on their part. I'd be gutted if they don't go down. They've done amazing, as you know. if you watch the Championship shows and regular shows. I've wanted Luton to do well the last couple of years, and I was chuffed when they went up, I've got to be honest. But I just cannot see a way they survive. I just can't. They got so much togetherness. You never know. Some teams have surprised us in recent years. Look at Brighton and Fulham, Brentford. They're flying in the Premier League now. They're not even really in the discussion for relegation, which is crazy. Yeah, I would love to see. I think Everton have really got away with it the last few years. If they're involved in the relegation battle again this year, like, you can't keep flirting with the relegation. I say this about Cardiff. You can't keep flirting with relegation, because eventually you're just going to go down. It's just, you cannot keep flirting with it. I can't believe that Bournemouth got rid of Gary O'Neill. Remains to be seen whether that'll be a good decision. I think they'll go down, because I think a large part of them staying up was from Gary O'Neill's management. Reece says he'd love to see Everton come down. Bournemouth getting rid of Gary O'Neill's might backfire. Yeah, I agree, mate, completely. Absolutely agree. In terms of who might be the surprise packages of the Premier League, Villa, outside bet for top 4. Take that to the bank. Outside bet for relegation, Everton, and I'm going to say a controversial one now. I don't really think it, but if Caicedo goes, I do worry about Brighton in terms of where they'll be compared to what they've done in recent years, because to lose Caicedo and there's one little fly buzzing around, just doing my head in. To lose Caicedo and McAllister in the same season, I think is a worry. I don't think they'll be relegated, but I think they might be in the bottom half. I think Wolves as well. Yeah, I agree with you there, Reece. Wolves are in trouble. Reece says, I'm tired of Sean Dyche's excuses all the time. At Burnley, after every game, you'd say we have to be realistic. We don't have money, even though they had 100 million plus every year from TV money. Now Everton is the same thing, same excuses. Yeah, Everton been making excuses for years, mate. And they escaped by the skin of their teeth probably the last 2 or 3 years. You can't keep doing it, mate. In terms of the Championship, who I think will be a bit of some dark horses. I think Cardiff could be a dark horse. And of course, there's a bit of, bias in there. Of course there is. It's my club, it's my hometown. So I'm a bit biased. But I think the manager's building a bit of a decent squad. And I believe that if Cardiff were within touching distance of the playoffs in January, the owner will spend money to try and get up into the playoffs. He will take that gamble where he'll be able to spend money again in January. So I think they could be dark horse. As I said yesterday, though, if you had a time machine and you went and told me they get relegated next year, I wouldn't be surprised. And if you told me they came second, it wouldn't surprise me either. The Championship's mental. Cardiff is like the epitome of the Championship. You never know what they're going to do. In terms of other dark horses, Sheffield Wednesday, I think they could be in with a shout of maybe top 10, top 8, potentially playoffs. I don't think you can say Sunderland are dark horses, but I think they'll do quite well this year again. I think Diallo might end up going back there on loan, which I think helps them a lot. Coventry, I think they'll do well. Blackburn Rovers have got to do well at some point. But my dark horses for the Championship is Birmingham City. Done some tremendous transfer business in the summer. Really, really clever signings. They got a good young squad. Love it. I really think they're doing a good job. Yeah, I agree with you, Reece. Ipswich got momentum going into the season. Could be dark horses. Norwich, disappointing last year. QPR might go down. Yeah, I think. Preston losing Johnson's also. Yeah, Preston, I think, could be in a bit of trouble. And I agree with you with Ipswich. Teams which come up from League One often do quite well. the teams which have got the momentum and they finished the season well. Like Luton did it, Sunderland did it. Right, let's have a look at some of these arrivals for Birmingham very quickly. So they brought in from Wolves, they brought in Dion Sanderson, a good young centre-back. Lee Buchanan from Werder Bremen, good left-back. Right-back, Ethan Laird from United, he's a decent player. Bilic from Derby, CDM, good. Tyler Roberts from Leeds, could do a job, I guess. Never really seen what the fuss is with him. But he's a young player. He's got a bit of pace about him. So I think, you could see him scoring goals. Got a couple of frees. They got Anderson from Blackpool and Miyoshi from Royal Antwerp. They signed Dembele from Bournemouth. And then they signed a couple of... they brought in a couple of youth players from their youth system in Oakley and Kelela from midfield. And they brought in Sunic, who's another defensive midfielder from Berlin, and Nico Gordon from Solihull Motors. You never know how these non-league players are going to turn out. But the oldest player they've signed is Kishi Anderson, 28, from Blackpool on a free transfer. All the other players range from 18 to... Actually, the 18-year-old is from their academy. But they're sort of early 20s. And they already have a pretty young squad. I think losing Heath Chong to Luton is a blow, and I think losing Joe Bellingham to Sunderland is a bit of a blow. Joe Bellingham will be interested in the Championship, playing for Sunderland, because I think he's a real good replacement for Diallo, who they lost, I don't think he's as good as his brother, but he's only 17 and he's already played quite a lot of games, which is... if he keeps on the current trajectory, he could end up being anything, I guess, He's got the name as well, which means he's gone for 17 and he's gone for 5 million, a couple of million on paper, but 5 with add-ons and things. He made 24 appearances in the Championship, So he's 17 and he's played like a lot of games. And you compare that to Ruben Corwell, who we were talking about yesterday for Cardiff, who's struggling for game time. And this is why other players develop quicker, because you've got Joe Bellingham, who's played 25 games in the Championship. You've got Archie Gray playing in the Leeds first team at 17, 18, and he looks like he's going to start against Cardiff. Interesting, isn't it? So hopefully tomorrow we'll have a preview for Cardiff City's season and the Leeds game with Derek Brazil. We'll also then next week have a preview of his beloved Manchester United with Derek Brazil. And we've also got an episode on grassroots football with Derek Brazil coming up, and his involvement with Tre Thomas Bluebirds in the Welsh League. But as always, it's such a pleasure chatting to Derek. I love spending time with him. And then we record, instead of recording like a full podcast, we recorded like a few bits of content, which will be out in the coming weeks, coming days. And it's just got to give him a bit of an edit. So I'm going to edit the Cardiff one tonight or tomorrow morning. And then it should be out. It'll be out as soon as possible. I'm hoping to get it out tomorrow night. The latest it'll be out is Saturday lunchtime. But it's downloading as we speak, ready to be edited. So that'll be good. It's always a good time with Derek. The Championship is mental, Reece. Honestly, mate, it is. You are right. It's the strongest it's been in years. But it's the football that these teams play. Like all the team, like Cardiff nearly got relegated last year, and our manager, is trying to play with inverted fullbacks to overload the midfield. Like, it is insane, some of the football that these teams will play next year. Southampton have got to get rid of some players. They've got such a huge squad. They got I think I read they got 30 players or 31 players in their squad. And look, we know Lavia is going to go, and they've sold this lad to Newcastle today. But ultimately, they're going to be strong. Leicester have made some clever signings. So it's interesting, how things are going to develop. But yeah, that's me for tonight. Appreciate you all as ever. I'm hoping to get Theo from the Shed End podcast on a show on Monday. If not, he might join me and Rodri next Thursday because Rodders is back next week. But unfortunately, Theo had to pull out right at the last minute. He had a family emergency. But he will be on, hopefully on Monday. But if not, it'll be Thursday. As always, appreciate you. Do drop a comment in the chat after the show's finished. Helps us out a lot. Spread the word. Join patreon.com/AcePodcastNation for like £2 or whatever it is. Really helps keep the channel funded and going, and allows me to go into the studio and film content with Eat Sleep Media and stuff like that. It means a lot. Appreciate you. Take care. Goodbye.